in this episode with Georgia Lines.
I didn't feel very often like, oh, maybe I should listen to them. I don't actually remember feeling like that at all. I probably would walk away and be like, ugh, why don't they think I can do it? Or why don't they think someone, like at some point someone has to be able to push through, like, and kind of just feeling that's very, when I was 18, very much like, well, I don't have a backup plan. This is my plan and I'm throwing myself at it and I'm just going to see what happens. And I was very much like, I don't really understand why you're telling me I should have a backup plan. And a really big conversation internally that I was having, like, how can I do this? How can I do what I feel like I'm, called to do? How do I make that happen? And so I entered into RockQuest in my last year of high school. Well, I entered in every year I could, actually, from year 8 or year 9. Didn't get through the first heats, the first 2 years. And then the last year I did it, I actually won the national solo duo for that, which was awesome. And it kind of just gave me the boost of confidence of being like, oh, actually, maybe I am good at this. Like, maybe I can pursue this. And there was no like, yay, you've won. Here's all these opportunities that come from it now and make your path really easy. Like, none of that didn't happen for me. But it kind of gave me that boost of being like, oh, okay, I can do this. I mean, it's never easy. It's never, there's moments of it being easy, moments of going to the studio where you're like, oh, that was a great day of just smashing a song out in a day. But 90% of the time, it's just the grind and going back into the studio and, I've got 40 songs to pick my favorite 12 and I don't even think I've got 12 in there. And so now I'm like, okay, now I have to go back to these songs and pick which ones I'm going to rework and rewrite. And, I don't think it's easy, but it's worth it. I have always had the mindset that we need people on our team to help us do the things that we can't do, but they need to be the right people because, if you have the wrong people, 1 degree off, over time you end up in a completely different place than you want to be.
Hello. Georgia, thanks for coming, first of all.
Thanks
for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you have been extremely busy and probably still are. So I appreciate you giving up time to come and talk to us today. And what I'd like to do is start with a question based on the title of our show.
Yes.
Life's Work. Now, I know you're still a young person.
Youthful.
Youthful. So this is not about like retrospective, what has been your life's work. It's what is your life's work. As far as you're concerned, how do you see that? How would you describe it?
I mean, I feel like that's a conversation that I'm constantly navigating in terms of being like, I feel, and I've felt this since I was like 12 years old, a sense of I feel called to be in the music industry, for lack of a better word. Like I don't know what it was. I don't know why. I just felt this, like, I feel like with my life, I want to write songs, I want to play shows, and I want to be someone that remembers people's names in the industry. And, you know, regardless of where it takes me and what it looks like. Like, I want to be someone that encourages people and someone that, I mean, remembering someone's name is a really important thing to me in terms of, like, it says a lot when you're in that industry and you're playing a show and you acknowledge people and you say thank you. Like, even though that feels like such a funny thing, I feel a sense of calling to be that kind of person, to be, for lack of a better word, like a light, or a sense of like a good role model in that space. You know, I grew up like watching Brooke Fraser and all of these amazing female Kiwi artists that I was just like, as a kid, so inspired by, that they would be doing their thing, owning that space and be completely themselves. And I was like, man, I want to do that. I want to be that. I want to write music and feel like I've got something to give and, you know, create. I just was constantly creating stuff as a kid. So I feel like music was just a natural extension of that. And in terms of like my life's work, I feel like it morphs and changes as to what that looks like. Obviously, in every season, it's like looks different and the schedule changes, and having to navigate like what to say yes to, what to say no to, and, you know, all of that fun stuff that you have to do as an adult. But I feel like my life's work is being in the music industry, being a writer, being someone that fills that space. Yeah.
That's awesome. What I like about what you said as well, it's not just what, it's how. So what is the music industry, but the how bit about being that person who remembers people's names, you know, who's is polite, courteous, grateful, that kind of thing. It's important, right?
Goes a long way.
It does go a long way. So where does that come from? Where does that side of you come from?
I mean, probably a big chunk of a lot of things. Like, I grew up in a family with a faith. That's like been a really important part for me as a human being. I grew up in, you know, a sense of community, of having people, older people around me, surrounding me, encouraging me, and just in a family that's been really important. And you see when you're involved in those conversations and you are polite and you do appreciate someone, how much further that gets you. And you're not doing that in a way of like trying to manipulate someone at all, because that's not, I feel like, where it comes from. But you genuinely feel like if you acknowledge someone, or if someone acknowledges you, and you feel a sense of someone sees me, like you want to do more for them and you want to go the extra mile, or you want to, you know, work for that person. Like, that's just how it works. Like, my parents have had their own business for 20, how old am I? 27? I think 26, 27 years. They've, you know, run their own business, and, you know, we constantly have these conversations where they go, well, if you're going to run your own business, like, how you treat people is really important, because it means people want to work for you or they don't, you know, and that's massive. You want people on your team that want to be on your team and that support your vision, that are behind you and in your corner, and, you know, because otherwise you've got the wrong people on the bus driving you in a direction that you don't really want to go.
Yeah. I suppose, though, when you're also in your own business as well, you know, your customers, you want them to come back. So you want people to engage in a real positive way, don't you? That means that people feel like they were valued as a customer, and therefore they'll come back.
Yeah.
So have you learned that from your parents, do you think?
I think so.
And on the converse of that, has there been any times where you've not been treated like that and that stood out to you, and so that maybe contributed to you thinking, I don't want to be that person?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like my whole life I've been in conversations, or like you meet people and, oh, what's your name again? Oh, can you do that for me? Or, you know, like, I feel like that's just humans. Like, you either get people that really appreciate you and that really rubs off on you, or you get people that don't, and that really rubs off on you, and you're like, I do not want to be someone that treats another person this way, because it doesn't make you feel good, you know. And you pick up on that when you're a kid, when you have a teacher that encourages you and is someone that like sees you and goes like, I see you and you're doing a really good job, and then you have a teacher that doesn't point those things out. Or, I mean, that's a really simple example, like I think any age you pick up on how someone treats you, like, and how that affects you. So in terms of like specific examples, like I can't think of one person. I just feel like, you know.
I'll be honest with you. I feel like that's the norm.
Yes.
And then the exception is the people that, like you're talking about, that you are and that you know, are focused on being. They stand out because they're different.
Yeah.
You know, when you get...
It's refreshing.
Yeah, it is. Hey. When someone acknowledges you or recognises you or sees you, as you put it, which is a good way of seeing it, or, you know, gives you the good customer service. It stands out.
Good customer service is everything.
Yeah.
If someone remembers my name when I go in for a coffee, I'm like, this is where I come to get a coffee every week.
Yeah.
Not that I drink coffee anymore. I used to. But, you know, that customer service is everything, because it's how you leave someone, like how you leave them when they leave your shop. Or, and if, I mean, I'm definitely the type of person, if someone doesn't acknowledge me or I get a real sassy, moody vibe from someone, I'm like, I don't want to buy something in here, even if I want to buy something from here.
Yeah. It's a shame that that's the way it is, though, right?
Yeah.
That there's so much of that. But I think that might be a reflection of some of the things we were talking about just before we started this conversation around, you know, how many people are happy at work. I think that's what we get in the way of customer service is a reflection of how people feel being at work. Maybe. Anyway, we'll get to work. We'll talk about your work very soon. But before we do, I want to dip a bit further back into your childhood. You've talked about it. You've touched on it. So can you tell me about your family context?
Yeah,
Like
sure.
where you grew up, what your family looked like.
Yep.
And importantly, what was Georgia like as a young girl?
I would love for us to be friends right now, the 12-year-old version of myself, and I feel like we just have a real good time. So I grew up in Tauranga. This has been my hometown. I'm 27, or just about to turn 27. When I say just about, October, we're almost there.
All right, okay.
I'm a big birthday person.
Planning already.
Planning already. So grew up in Tauranga. I've got a younger brother who's 20. What year are we? 2023. He's 23. He's a 2000 baby. Younger brother, and then two parents who run an interior design company in the Mount, and have run that, which is, you know, ebbs and flows of what that's looked like for the last 20-something years. In terms of what I was like as a child, I had a lot of energy, still have a lot of energy, very creative. I was always making circuses and shows, and, you know, your parents would have friends over, my parents would have friends over, and I would be like, all right, we've got to make a show for them tonight. You know, so that was very much my personality. I just loved making things, and I loved baking and learning languages. And I mean, sad to say, I can't really speak any language. I cannot speak any language fluently other than English. But I loved learning. I loved school. I loved, creating, writing, like sewing. Like I loved op shopping, still do. I would buy like a curtain at the op shop, bring it home, and my mum would be like, what is that? Like, that is awful and dirty. And I'd be like, it's floral, it's really cool. And I would make it into some kind of outfit and, you know, make a top or a skirt that I would probably wear once, and it would rip, and, you know, it was my parents would say I'm very rip, tear, bust. Like, I would just make something happen and just throw it together, and it would be great. And that was very much me as a child, and still I feel like is very much me as an adult. Had my own t-shirt business when I was 12. So my very first concert was a Brooke Fraser concert in Hamilton, and I would have been maybe 11. And I remember buying a black t-shirt that was this big B, obviously her merch. I think it must have been before the show, because clearly the whole entire show I was thinking about how much I just paid for this T-shirt and how much it would have costed to make. And I just remember sitting there and being like, surely this didn't say it was $40. Surely this didn't cost her $40 to make. Like, and my parents are like, yeah, no, like watch the concert. And I'm just sitting there like my brain's just ticking away. And so I left the concert and I was like, I can do this. I can make my own T-shirt business. And so I did. I had a business partner who was also the same age, and her mum worked in, what's it called when they have like heaps of different clothing brands, like wholesale.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever that is. So I had all the contacts, employed someone to do, graphic design for me, and I sold them at the Little Big Markets when the Little Big Markets in Tauranga first started. And I sold T-shirts and did that for a little while.
Successful?
I mean, I made money.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
What's
Not
successful
still
for a
got
12-year-old?
boxes of T-shirts in
No,
the garage.
I don't. I have, I think, 3 T-shirts that I've kept because I just have a box of things that I keep because I'm like, well, I'm never going to make these T-shirts again.
Yeah.
So I don't have boxes in the backyard somewhere hiding. Yeah. So successful. I brought my business partner out for $200.
Right.
Yep. And I mean, I made money. Like, what's successful for a 12-year-old? Like, you sell T-shirts at the market and you pumped and you.
But at least what I meant, I think, by successful was at least you did it, right?
Yeah.
Because I think I'd had conversations with my eldest daughter who looks after our social media and wasn't here today. She would have loved this conversation because she also had an idea for a T-shirt business. At 7 years old,
Awesome.
wrote a business plan, but never actually followed through and did it. So at least you did it. That was successful. It was good. And you sold them.
Yeah, sold them.
Yeah.
Learned a lot about how business worked and
Yeah.
having to pay bills and having to learn the process of what you do when you have an idea and you want to follow through with it. And then you have, bills to pay and profit and all of that kind of stuff. So,
And were you learning that from your parents because they were in business?
Yeah, I mean, they were walking that, like, through with me every step of the way in terms of helping me figure out. I mean, as a 12-year-old, you're kind of limited as to, like, understanding, profit and loss and all of that kind of stuff that you have to learn at some point. But unless you, with T-shirts, it was like I learnt it quickly because it was my business and I cared a lot about it and I wanted to make money because that was me as a kid. I was always like, how can I make money? I'd sell avocados on the side of the road, and as soon as I had sold the box of avocados, I'd go into the fridge and sell whatever was in the fridge. And my poor mum was just like, I just done the groceries. So in terms of, like, I feel like my parents really, and still do, really guided me through a lot of the business aspect of, you're 12-year-old, you don't really know, but yeah. So that was me.
But the fact that you didn't know, and you gave it a go, say something about your character, right? That you're willing to give things a go, put yourself out there and try. So you were creative, you were a performer, independent, I would say as well. Yeah. Buying your business partner out and, independent. I see a lot of, in the research for this conversation, I see a lot of that still in who you are today. Obviously, you're a performer and you're a creator, but independence as well. So, we'll come to that a little bit. So you talked about your family.
Yes.
Musical family, or where did the music bit come from? Because you were creating, you were baking, you were making T-shirts, you were doing performances for people coming over. But where did the music bit come in?
I didn't actually start singing until year 6, so last year of primary school. Like, I'd done SingStar, and you've got SingStar happening in the house, so that's very different for, I went through this real nasal singing phase, which was not cool at all, but I do remember thinking I was really cool. I think the Britney Spears, everything that was happening in that moment of time, I was like, well, I need to sing like that. And so that really bled through into my SingStar. But the very first time that I sang in front of anyone was at a school talent quest where I sang. I don't know if you remember High School Musical when that came out.
No.
No, yes. So when that came out, I was like, I'm going to do this Troy and Gabriella scene for my school talent quest. And so, we practiced this with a bunch of our friends, and I walked through the auditorium with my white lab coat on and had this, moment with my friends and sang. And I think my parents were like, oh, a kid can actually sing. My dad can sing. My mum played the piano. I mean, she's got a piano at home. She hasn't played it in a really long time. But they're definitely musical. Both sides of the family would argue that it comes from their side of the family, being like, oh, well, your grandmother was musical, or your... So I don't really know. It just comes from everywhere. My brother is also super talented, plays the drums, sings, writes, produces. Like, he played drums for me for quite a few years. So I started in the intermediate age and stage, started writing, picked up the guitar, did guitar lessons, started to write songs and figure out, like, I really enjoyed writing. I think the first song I ever recorded, with Luke Thompson. So he had a studio out at a friend's house they were friends with my parents. And so I went out there, and, Luke is this guy that's been in the music industry and been doing really cool stuff, and recorded, the song that has never seen the light of day and probably will never see the light of day. And it's just started writing. I played piano when I was younger as a kid, but I struggled with my teacher and the approach, because I really wanted to play. I mean, I was a massive Brooke Fraser fan. I wanted to learn how to play her songs and play chords, and that obviously didn't fit into, how she was teaching with, like, reading music and doing grades. And so I stopped. And it wasn't until towards the end of high school where I was writing more and more, and I was like, I really want to learn the piano, that I discovered YouTube and how great of a teacher YouTube is, and learnt, how to play chords, and kind of learnt everything backwards. I figured out how to do it, but then I wanted to learn the theory. High school was a really pivotal moment for me as an artist and a writer, and realizing, like, I really wanted to continue this on past just, entering.
So it's about that time that you're thinking that this might be a career for you.
Yeah, and I had no idea how to do that. Like, that was quite an overwhelming concept of figuring out, how do I pursue a career in a creative industry where there is no pathway. Like, there is no set pathway of, if you want to be a lawyer, this is what you do, or you want to be a doctor, this is what you do. But if you want to be a musician, or you want to be a writer, like, what do I do? What do I do what do I do to guarantee that I can do this as a job? And there is no guarantee. So that was kind of like a weird and a really big conversation internally that I was having. Like, how can I do this? How can I do what I feel like I'm, called to do? How do I make that happen? And so I entered into RockQuest in my last year of high school. Well, I entered in every year I could, actually, from year 8 or year 9. Didn't get through the first heats, the first 2 years. And then the last year I did it, I actually won the national solo duo for that, which was awesome. And it kind of just gave me the boost of confidence of being like, oh, actually, maybe I am good at this. Like, maybe I can pursue this. And there was no like, yay, you've won. Here's all these opportunities that come from it now and make your path really easy. Like, none of that didn't happen for me. But it kind of gave me that boost of being like, oh, okay, I can do this.
So thankfully you won. And here you are today, which is great. If you hadn't have won at that point in time, do you think if you hadn't have had that kind of confidence boost, would that have deterred you in any way, do you think?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I was and still am very determined teenager, child, human. You know, I very much was like, if I want to do something, I will do it. Once I get an idea in my head, everything, you know, funnels through into that idea. I mean, it's great, but that's very much where my ripped hair bus, like, oh, I've got an idea, I'm going to do this. And I just go and I don't necessarily think about it all. I have gotten a lot better at that. But, you know, I think because I felt that deep sense of love for what I was doing and writing and going, well, actually, someone has to make a job out of this. Like, people can't just say, because I would have a lot of people say, well, not many people make it in the industry. Like, no one makes it. It's a very hard industry to get into. Like, what's your backup plan? And that was the constant conversation from every second person. Like, oh, well, what are you going to study? Oh, not many people make it in that industry. Like, and so I was like, but someone has to. Like, at some point, someone has to, because music continues on. So why can't I do that? So in terms of like, if I hadn't won the competition, I mean, my approach might have been different, or I might have just had to navigate a little bit more of, I feel like I've navigated a lot of disappointment, but I don't know.
Yeah,
you know, I feel like
right? I think about the difference between people who are successful and maybe less so successful, should we say. It's that level of determination of how long you just keep going, keep pushing. Yeah. So the people who are saying to you, because I can imagine that, you know, oh, well, what's your backup plan just in case, you know, did that kind of, how did you respond to that? How did you, you know, was it chipping away at you, or was it making you more determined to prove them that actually, no, I can do this?
I think probably I didn't feel very often like, oh, maybe I should listen to them. You know, I don't actually remember feeling like that at all. I probably would walk away and be like, ugh, why don't they think I can do it? Or why don't they think someone, like, at some point someone has to be able to push through, like, and kind of just feeling that's very, when I was 18, very much like, well, I don't have a backup plan. This is my plan, and I'm throwing myself at it, and I'm just going to see what happens. And I was very much like, I don't really understand why you're telling me I should have a backup plan, you know, which maybe that's what's gotten me to, you know, it's been 9 years or 8 years of pursuing this. Like, maybe that's the attitude and the mindset that has gotten me to this point. But
I think there's something in that. I remember watching, it was like one of those videos that broke the internet type thing. I think it was Arnold Schwarzenegger talking about the same sort of thing. And he says he doesn't have a plan B, because when you have a plan B, it kind of splits your focus. Yeah. So you just have a plan A, and that's it. And that's essentially your approach, isn't it? Yeah. You've got a plan A, and I'm just focused on that.
This is what I'm doing.
And that's what I'm going to do. Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So where do you get that tenacity from? Is there a, do you follow one of your parents in that respect, or are they both like that? Or
my mum is, in the best way possible, really sassy. Like, I feel like sassiness sometimes gets like a bad rap. Like, I can be quite sassy, and my mum is very much, she's been in business for years, and, navigated through the recession and having a lot of staff and having minimal staff and moving buildings and changing business plans. And, it's a long time to be in the same business and to run a successful business, and her and my dad have worked together for a long time. And she's really wonderful and very good at keeping harmony, but also very good at, should say, putting your big pants on and having to just like have the hard conversations. And she's always been really good at that, and carries a really great level of sass when she needs to have it. And I feel like I've watched that and watched how she's treated her staff and looked after her staff, and my dad too. Love my dad. But how she's led and how she's kind of carried on and gone, okay, this is really hard. I need to carry on. I need to pick myself up. I need to have those really hard conversations that I don't really want to have. But unfortunately, I'm the boss and I have to have those conversations. So there's probably been, for sure, elements of that I've picked up on and like learnt. My dad is super positive and very much like, you can do it. Of course you can. Like, keep going. I know it's really hard, but you can keep going. Like, and that positivity I think has been really contagious for me and really necessary, especially through COVID and the last handful of years where it's been a wild journey in my job. I feel like that positivity is something that I've really needed, and probably has gone hand in hand with that like grit in terms of going, you need grit, but you need positivity. You need to look at it going like, I can do this. Like, what is the internal conversation? What is the mindset that's happening here? So I feel like between the two of them, those have been like really helpful.
And so
really
you were saying there
things.
about your dad being really, ultra positive. So I'm taking from that your parents weren't some of those people who were saying about having a backup plan. Were they
No.
very supportive of you
100%.
pursuing this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I know is not normal. Like, so many people in the music industry don't have supportive, family or friends, or, I mean, probably more so friends because they find people that support them. But I know that's not really common, and I'm really lucky. Like, my parents have hardly missed a show. And when they can't go to a show, my dad's so gutted. And he's like, I can't come to the show. I'm like, Dad, it's okay. You've literally come to every show since I was, 15. But I feel that support. Like, I feel carried by them. And you need that. I had a kid ask me, I was a part of this tour the last month called National Young Leaders Day, and did this Q&A in every session, and the kids would ask a question, and I had this one kid stand up and ask, like, do you think you can do music by yourself? And I thought that was such a fascinating question, especially for, 12, 13-year-old to ask, because I was like, no, you can't. Like, I don't feel, even though I'm a solo artist, I do have a band, but there is no way that I could ever do what I do without people and without support and without a sense of like people surrounding me and carrying me. Because I'm like, isolation is the worst thing ever for any human being in any situation, let alone when you're in the music industry and you're throwing yourself at, something creative and you're needing to be on all the time. You need people to support you. You need people to see you outside of your craft, to see you outside of who you are as an artist, and just love you as a person. So
independence
yes,
and isolation are two obviously different
Very,
things.
yeah.
Independent doesn't mean by yourself, does
No.
it? It means doing your thing and you're standing on 2 feet and you can
and
drive yourself.
confident
but
in that.
you need people, you need other people and support in order to be able to achieve.
Yeah,
Like in any aspect of life, really, we all need each other, even though we don't sometimes recognise that.
yes,
Yeah. Should add Andy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know my dad?
I worked with Andy. I
So you know who I'm talking about then. Yeah.
I remember him coming into work with your very first CD. There was a CD that you'd made. I think it must have been the first one. I'll be honest with you, I was in the loft of my house last night for an hour
Yeah.
looking for it. I know it.
Brilliant.
I know it's somewhere, but I can't put my finger on it.
How many years ago would that have been? Were you working for Lodestar?
I was in the same office
This
at the
is so
Mount.
good.
It would have been maybe 9 years ago. Something. I want to say something like that.
9 years ago.
8, 9, 10 years ago. Had to tell really.
I'm trying to think what would have lived on that CD 8, 9, 10 years ago.
Well, that's why I was trying to dig it out. But the reason for raising it was actually I remember your dad being so proud of you. That was just you could feel that sense of pride. Which is amazing, eh?
It is amazing, and
Yeah.
I feel that, like I feel that, and I think I mean, having parents and a family and a support network that has been nothing but supportive has carried me and has been so important. Like, I just don't think I could have navigated through, especially COVID, because that was really hard. I don't think I could have kept going without other people saying, remember why you do this. You love it. I know it's really hard right now. Yes, it sucks having your own business, doesn't it? Oh, it sucks having to pay tax, but you know what? It's okay. Everybody has to pay tax. Like, everybody has to navigate this as a small business. Like, you can do this. And having, like you're saying, like that feeling, that sense of like, oh, I've got people behind me that love me and support me and feel proud of me. Like, it's amazing. Yeah. I love it. I love my parents. They're great.
That's awesome. So can you tell me, I'm really interested, and because my youngest daughter, who was trying to get singing lessons with you, by the way, but you're far too busy and important now for that.
I'm so sorry, Grace.
But that's all good. That's all good. You're inspiring her in different ways. You are. But, you know, I sit and watch her, and she sits there and writes songs, and I've no idea, where does that come from? How do you start writing songs? Like, and you were a teenager, at school, and you wanted to write. You didn't want to just sing covers. You wanted to write songs. Where does that come from? And like you said before, where do you start? Not just in the music industry, which I'd like to get to, but where do you even start to write songs, and what do you write about? What are you inspired by?
I mean, great questions. Where do you start? I mean, looking back now, how I would answer that question would probably be very different to what I would say when I was in year 9. Maybe. Where do you start? Like, I feel like I was very much overwhelmed at the idea of, how do I get to my end goal? How do I get there? How do I create a pathway? Because in my mind I was like, I need somewhere to follow. I need something to hang on to, because otherwise I'm just kind of walking blind, which obviously I had to do. But I think breaking it down and going, I just it's okay to just do the step in front of me. It's okay to just, this week I'm going to learn an instrument. Not learn an instrument in a week, but you know what I mean? Like, this week I'm going to get better at something, or I'm going to try and write a song. Like, I don't have to write the best song I'm ever going to write this week. I don't have to release a song that I haven't written this week. No one's asking me to do that. I'm just going to take the very first step towards my goal of, okay, if my goal is I want to make this my career, or I want to be writing, releasing music and make, a living off this, that's my goal. Okay, well, if I'm 13, right now I probably don't have to pay any bills. I'm just going to learn how to play the piano, or I'm going to learn one song this week. I'm going to learn a cover, or I'm going to write a chorus, or I'm going to read a book, or listen to a podcast, or watch a YouTube video on songwriting. In terms of when I was that age, what I was writing about was very much like what I was experiencing, and how I remember going into like a rest home. I don't know why I was in there, because there was no one. I think maybe I was singing the national anthem for Anzac Day or something. And I remember meeting this lady, and she had dementia, and she was talking to me as if I was her daughter. And I left that conversation feeling like, man, I want to write a song about this, because it was such a personal conversation that I felt so moved by. And I wrote the song called Oh June. And I think I was about 15 at that time. And so a lot of the conversations that I was having with people, or how I experienced someone, or what I would see the world as, I would write about. And I just felt like I could write about it. So I'd be like, oh, well, I've had a conversation with this person, I'm going to put that in my song. I mean, now I still feel like that's very much the same in terms of like I write about what I feel, I write about what I've walked through, what I'm walking through. It's like a processing, journaling, therapeutic thing for me to write a song. Like I can sit down and go, okay, well, I'm really feeling this. Or I didn't want to write about that at the time, but I'm going to revisit that place and I'm going to write about that moment or that person or that loss or, so that's often what I'm writing about. But it took me a really long time to feel, what's the word? Like for so long, I was like, oh, writer's block. I've got writer's block. I can't write today. Oh, well, can't write today. Oh, well, it's been another week. Can't write today. Another writer's block. And I remember reading this book called The War of Art. I always get confused between that. Have you read that book?
I haven't, no.
It's really good.
There's the Art of War and then the War of Art.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I remember a friend of mine giving that book to me, and he and his wife, they were both creatives. He was a songwriter and she was a filmmaker. They were like, it was for my birthday, and they're like, you need to read this book. And basically the whole book is about like how writer's block doesn't exist and how writer's block is the enemy of what you're trying to do. Like it will do and create any excuse for you to not do what you're supposed to do. I remember feeling so confronted with that of, I've been stuck in this writer's block for so long, too scared to write, too nervous about what I'm going to say. What if my song that I'm going to write is not good enough? What if it's a terrible song? And kind of just getting to the point of being crippled by not doing anything, too overwhelmed at, all of the what ifs and just getting stuck, and then reading this book and going, I just have to turn the tap on and I just have to exercise the muscle. And when I sit down to write, I sit down to write. And regardless of if it's the best song or the worst song, that's okay. I'm just sitting down to write a song, and that's it.
Yeah. I'm connecting with this on a level that maybe I should. This is about you, not about me. But at the weekend, I had Saturday. I'm writing a book at the minute, and I had Saturday to myself, no excuses. The family were away, to write, and by midday, I'd cleaned the garden, done the washing up, tidied the house. I've done all the things that my wife would say I never do, but I was avoiding actually trying to get to it. When you're successful, and I know that you're on a journey. Right? I've heard you say that you're on a journey and enjoying the journey, and it's not something that you ever arrive at. You're always moving towards, which is good way of looking at things. But you've achieved a great level of success. Does it become harder to write? I read recently that people who write good books or write a good screenplay or something like that, and they're winning an award for it or they get recognised for it and have a sense of achievement, it becomes harder to then write again because you're now trying to either maintain that level or surpass it. Is that a thing in songwriting, or does it become easier?
Oh, I'm sure it for sure is a thing in songwriting. Like, I think of, these massive artists like Harry Styles, and I'm like, man, that guy, like, I think is absolutely incredible. I'm like, how does he write another album after this album he's just done? And I mean, it's like all of these artists that continue to write albums, like the amount of pressure that they must feel. I don't know if you've ever watched the Taylor Swift documentary, and she talks about that in terms of, I have to make sure that I'm writing and I get nominated for a Grammy. Like, I mean, I'm definitely throwing words out here, but I remember, she talked about that and the way in which she was writing and the place in which it was coming from. And then she didn't get the nomination and what that did to her, which I found really fascinating, like listening and watching that. I mean, clearly I'm not there. I'm not Taylor Swift, but...
Not far off.
Not far off. But I think the way in which you do something and you go about it is really important. Like for me, I'm working on my album at the moment. And that feels really scary because I'm like, oh, this is like the first official album. Like I've done EPs and I've kind of done these little chunks that, you know, I've felt really proud of. But now this is like, this is it. This is the album. But it's no different to, it shouldn't be any different in terms of like my job is to write songs that are meaningful to me, and I need to be proud of the work that I'm doing. And I think if my focus stays on that and I'm focusing on all I need to do is be myself and allow that to come through with what I'm doing, and then I'm okay. Because I think the moment I go, well, I won an award or I, you know, that did really well, I need to make sure that I top that or I do better or I achieve this award again. Like it just creates so much pressure in this like rat wheel of having to chase after something that's never guaranteed. And at the same time, I think it's also really important to make sure that whatever you're doing, you're growing and you're getting better at. Like I'm definitely not saying you can't do that, because I want my album to be better than what I've done before, and I want to be growing and musically expanding and making sure that, you know, this project is something that I'm equally as proud of as what I've done before, if not more. But I think the core behind why you're doing it and how you're going about it really affects like whether it's easy or not. I mean, it's never easy. It's never, there's moments of it being easy, moments of going to the studio where you're like, oh, that was a great day of just smashing a song out in a day. But 90% of the time, it's just the grind and going back into the studio. And, you know, I've got 40 songs to pick my favorite 12, and I don't even think I've got 12 in there. And so now I'm like, okay, now I have to go back to these songs and pick which ones I'm going to rework and rewrite. And, you know, I don't think it's easy, but it's worth it.
A certain, like you just said there about certain days, like the time goes by. You know, I can't remember the name. Well, if I could, I can't pronounce it anyway. There's a psychologist who wrote a book called Flow. I don't know if you've ever read that. When you're in your zone and time just seems to go by because you're just doing your thing, and hours pass by because you've got flow. I imagine that there are days like that, and then, like you said, there are days where it's a grind. Are there, when it comes to writing songs and creating, are there kind of topics that flow better than others? I mean, I'm conscious of the fact that you said earlier, and I've read this before, obviously, about, you know, you write songs based on your experiences because that's, you know, they're feelings, they're things you can connect to and relate to, and I think that's why a lot of songs are, you know, more of the negative emotions because they hit us harder, and there's a lot more of those emotions. But, you know, do certain things that you write about flow better than others? Is there something there, or does it just depend what day it is?
Depend what day it is.
Yeah.
I remember when I was about 15 or 16 meeting with Joel Shadbolt. This was before he was doing LAB stuff. And he was, you know, our neighbours who were really good friends of ours were his aunt and uncle, and they were like, oh, our nephew is this amazing guitarist, like you should sit down, like he's been in the industry, he's, you know, he's wonderful, like you should meet with him and just ask him any questions that you have. And so I remember having this conversation with Joel and sitting down with him, and his advice was write in every emotion. Like if you're feeling something deeply, write when you're feeling that, or write when you're feeling, you know, sad or angry or whatever the emotion is that you're feeling, rather than going, I'm going to write about it later, write about it when I'm not feeling the thick of that emotion. He's like, the lyrics and the emotion that you get in that time where you go, okay, I'm going to throw myself at it now, even though I don't feel like I'm going to do it, gives you something completely different. And I have often thought of that when I'm, you know, experiencing something that's like really hard, and I'm like, I don't want to write about it because it just feels too confronting. was remembering like I need to write about it in the thick of the emotion. You know, and so I don't feel like there's necessarily like a specific emotion that is any easier or flows better for me. But there's definitely times where I look back on the songs and I'm like, oh, I did write that in the thick of that feeling or that time or that experience, and how I've written about it, like I can feel that so much more. Scary though, because you're having to be very vulnerable, you know, especially if you're in the room collaborating with other artists and you're like, what do you want to write about? And you're like, oh, I want to write about this. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. Buckle in, you know? So, yeah, I don't feel like I've gravitated towards, well, I know this works for me and I'm going to just stick in my lane.
I'd like to take a moment to talk about one of our sponsors. I'm really pleased to announce that we have Sharp New Zealand as a sponsor. And it's great to have Sharp on board because as a customer, I can speak about their products and services from personal experience. And it feels good to be able to endorse and recommend a company because of the level of satisfaction we have regarding the services they provide. And across my businesses, we've certainly been impressed with the care and collaboration we've experienced in our dealings with Sharp. It's certainly a brand that we trust. Sharp has a long history of creating breakthrough products designed to meet the needs of people living in New Zealand. Sharp's leadership in technology innovation ensures it's at the forefront of the pack, providing business solutions from printing and photocopying to interactive meeting solutions and ICT phone systems. No matter where you are or what size your organisation, whether you're large or small, Sharp New Zealand can provide their services to you nationwide. If you're looking to upgrade your technology or renew your photocopier leases, talk to your local Sharp team or visit the website at sharp.net.nz. So what I was going to ask there is, going back to the word grind, I don't want to pick up on it being negative, but I'm interested in your perspective on your career as a job. I mean, this podcast is about life's work. It's about life and work. And I think, you know, some of the more ignorant of us, include myself in that, and this is why I'm asking, because I've got a genuine interest, you know, might look at it from the outside and see it as a bit of a jolly. You know, it's like they only see the bits that, you know, when you're performing and you're on the radio, you're on TV, it looks glamorous, it looks amazing. But we don't know what goes into it behind the scenes. You know, so your work, you know, what does that look like? You know, how much effort goes into? You know, bear in mind, I have got some ideas if I've read about certain things, you know, that you've said about this before, but I'm really interested in your perspective on your career as a career, and what goes into it. And if you can, while you're talking about that, big question, while you're talking about that,
You're right, no, it's fine.
Yeah, talk about like getting into the industry, right? And this is that independence thing you've touched on earlier, where you know, my understanding is that you've got to where you've got to at this point in time. Yes, you've had support around you, but you've driven it every step of the way. You alluded to it, you know, being at school, not knowing, well, where do I go? You've driven that. So there's clearly been a lot of hard work in that. So if you could maybe start there and talk about the kind of working at it to get to where you are at now, and what work looks like now.
It's a large question.
It is. Do you want me to summarise it?
That's okay. If I forget points, you can come back to that. I mean, I've been working at this since I left high school in 2014. It has felt hard. You know, obviously, like you're saying, most people just see the 10%, or they see, you know, the release cycle, and when you're doing interviews and, you know, playing the shows, and it feels and looks glamorous. And I love that part of the job. And obviously you have to love that part, because that's a big part of it, is the playing the shows. But nobody sees everything else. Nobody sees that, you know, like you're saying, I'm an independent artist. So that means I'm not signed to a label. I have to pay for everything. I'm the boss of my team. I have a team of people. I have, a management team. I have a manager, and then I have a management team. I have, an accountant. I have a booking agent in New Zealand. I have a booking agent in America. I have a PR company. I have all of these different people who, in different ebbs and flows, they work for me and they help support where I'm going, which is something I think a lot of artists can forget. When you start getting more and more people involved, like, you are the boss. Your job, your career, where you want to go, it's yours. So you need to take control of that and make sure that you are driving the bus in the direction that you want to go in. Because it's so easy. Like, obviously, I love my team. I've worked, with my manager, Mikey, for I think 4 years now, and we talk on the phone probably like 10 times a day. And he lives in Auckland and I live here in Tauranga. And, we pretty much should just set up like a webcam and just be in the same office, and, it would probably be a lot better. But we have always had the mindset that we need people on our team to help us do the things that we can't do. But they need to be the right people, because, if you have the wrong people, 1 degree off, over time you end up in a completely different place than you want to be. So in terms of like the journey, the last 8 years, 9 years, it took me about 4 years to release any music, because I was, I'd left high school. I had no idea what I was doing. I was trying. I was every person that asked me what I did, I was like, I'm an artist. I'm trying to figure this out. I'm trying to figure out this journey. I had no idea how to do that. I was like, I knew this is what I wanted to do, but I wasn't with a label. I was on my own. I didn't have any management. I didn't have a team. I just had a lot of, support and friends and family that were like, you can do this. And so, I got to this point where I had been talking about it for so long and I hadn't done anything about it. I'd been playing shows and I'd been doing stuff, but I hadn't released any music. And I was like, okay, third person talking to myself. It's like, Georgia, you've got to put your money where your mouth is. And I remember being like, well, I haven't been able to get any NZ on air funding. Like, I've tried, I don't meet the criteria. Like, I've just been trying to just push on doors and hope that something happens, and couldn't get anything. So I was like, all right, I'm going to put it out there, a crowdfunded project. Like, I'm going to make an EP. Put it on Kickstarter, got the entire campaign funded in the 21 days, which was shocking to me. And, so then I was like, well, I have to do this now. So I ended up going over to Houston, because in that first 4 years I was nannying over in Houston for 3 months, met some really awesome people. And I was like, I want to do some work with this guy, Abel, that I met over in Houston. So I went over, flew over, had what I thought was going to be my EP, and I, was in the studio with him. I think 2 days in, I went home that night and I was like, this is old, stale version of myself. These songs represent 2014 Georgia, not 2017 Georgia. Or I have to make sure, because there are people that have funded this and believe in me and want me to do well, I have to make sure that I'm really proud of what I'm doing. So I went to the studio the next day and I was like, we're starting again. And, Abel was like, okay, sure. And I started the EP again. And I was like, these are the songs. I've got parts of songs on my phone. I've got, things I want to rewrite. You go and work over there for an hour. I'm going to go and set a timer for an hour, and I'm going to work on this, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to give you a verse. And then I'm going to go away and do the same thing again. And so for this whole week, I was like, you can't just make a half decision, Georgia, and wait for someone else to tell you if it's a good idea. Like, you are by yourself here, and you have to stick to your gut, and you've got to do it. And so I did. And so I was like, came home with this EP with I'd written a bunch of new songs. I'd reworked a bunch of songs. Really proud of myself, was real pumped, felt like I'd navigated, the biggest mountain. Woohoo, go me. And then I was working on this release party in Tauranga to celebrate. I'd done all this merch, had done all of this prep, and then we go into lockdown 3 days before this EP comes out. And so I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I've just worked my absolute butt off to get, to work through all of this internal work of like expectations and wanting it to be great and what if no one likes it and all of those conversations. And now I'm at home in lockdown. I can't play a show. I can't do interviews. I can't do anything that I would normally do. And I remember, through that whole weird, wild lockdown, there were so many pivotal moments of just like, Mikey and I would talk, Mikey's my manager, on the phone every day, like, what can we do today? How can we continue on? How can we carry on? Meanwhile, I was still teaching. So I was teaching online. My husband was studying full-time, so I was like the sole income earner, teaching, 12-hour days, meanwhile also trying to release my EP. And I made my office into a big, it looked like the Air New Zealand lounge. It was purple lights, and I borrowed lights. Someone left them outside their house, so I could pick them up and create like a stage and do an online release party. And so it was like every time I came up to like another hurdle, it was like, how can we rework this? How do we do this? How do we release new music when we've got a 2-week window? Okay, I need to make sure that I'm in Auckland for that week. I'm going to come up, I'm going to write a song, and then we'd be back in lockdown again, and I would be at home trying to figure out how to jump over the next hurdle. How do I play shows? Okay, I can't go touring. Your entire year's income over that summer is gone. So how do I carry on? How do I pay my bills? How do I, all of that stuff, because, I'm independent, it falls on me. There's no one else to do that. And I'm jumping over lots of different things in here. Obviously, NZ On Air, like their government, our government, their funding has been I could not do what I do without their funding. All of the years that I didn't get it, I kept going, obviously, and eventually I got a song funded, and I was like, now what do I do? But I could not do what I do without them, because I've just gone full time with this. I could not fund my entire project by myself. Like, I don't have that income coming in. So I feel very grateful that we live in a country where we have that support. In terms of like, is this answering your question?
Yes.
Like, where?
Well, it was such a big question.
I know that sounds like there's so many facets to this one question. So in terms of like what it's looked like a lot of the last few years, a lot of disappointments, and that probably has more looked like a grind of being like, okay, any normal pathway that I thought existed here does not exist anymore. Like, you cannot be in the same studio as someone else. So how am I going to write? Okay, I need to figure out how to write over Zoom. I can't travel. Okay, well, I need to do a session on Zoom. Zoom should have invested in Zoom when that, like having to relearn how to do everything and get the resources and have the tools at home to do that stuff. There was a lot of adjusting, a lot of repivoting, and still having this as my goal, but not being able to do any of the normal anythings to get there. Intros was, something that we birthed in that time, which is the mini web series. I just don't really know what to call it. You know, and that came out of lockdown of us going like, how can we carry on? How can we continue to do something when we can't do pretty much anything? So I look back on that time and I think like, man, there was so many opportunities that were handed to me and then taken away very quickly, and so many like exciting things that never eventuated, and tours that got cancelled, and you know, on a practical level, like income that just was non-existent, which meant that I had to teach. It meant that I had to, you know, I had to do online teaching. I had to carry that on. You know, I've been teaching for the last 5 years, and I've only just gotten to the point where I'm like, I actually have no capacity for it, because my days, like what I'm doing in my day, actually takes up so much headspace. I don't have the headspace to give to my kids that they need, which is hard because I love them and I love teaching, and I, you know, in another life, I feel like I would really enjoy being in that space. Maybe I'll come back to that space. But there's been a lot of juggling and a lot of, you know, okay, I'm going on tour next month. How do I teach my kids right up until I fly out that day, and then teach my kids to catch up for the week that I've missed the day that I fly home, you know? And so what people see on social media is obviously this very small glimpse of, oh, she just went to America, that's so awesome. But what they didn't see is like, I was working 12-hour days in America every day. There was no time to adjust to time zones. I played 4 shows. I slept on someone's, you know, couch, which fell, you know, broke the first night that I was there. You know, no one sees that. No one sees, like, I'm such a routine person, and having structure and like that makes me function so much better. No one sees the lack of that. No one sees like how hard you try to do all the things that you need to look after yourself. They just see like, oh, you just played a show in America, that's so exciting. You know, and then I come home and I'm like, I'm exhausted, but I've got to teach my kids today. And so I feel like it's been an absolute grind, but I have loved it. And I mean, I still love it. And I think knowing that there's seasons where it's like way more intense than others, and just knowing that, okay, I'm not going to have to teach and do this, you know, juggling music and feeling like I'm just like pushing and pushing and pushing forever. Like at some point, you hope it tips over.
Yeah.
So knowing that, you know, there's change eventually has to come at some point, I feel like has kind of just gone, all right, we just have to push through. I just have to keep going. I just have to figure out how to make it work, and, you know. Yeah.
I admire your attitude and approach to it. I mean, I think you've made it sound quite easy to be able to do that. But it's not. I know it's not, right? And most people are unable to actually see that they need to do that. Look forward and say, actually, this isn't going to last forever. Things are going to change. And if I keep doing what I'm doing, then it'll come right again, or, you know, things will change. It's very hard when you have so many knocks to keep going in the same direction. But when you want something, and as badly as you've wanted your career for so long, since you were a kid, you don't want to give up on it quickly.
And when you have people in your corner that know you so well and know what you need when you need it, you know, family, friends, like I trust Mikey, who's my manager, with my life. And you know, he works so hard. We both work hard. I'm like, he's only going to work as hard as I'm working. You know, anyone on my team is only going to work as hard as I work, because they can only do as much as I give them. You know, they can fight for opportunities, but if I'm not working hard for that, like that's eventually it just fizzles out. But I think having people on my team who, when I'm having the moments of like, I actually just want to give up right now, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I've got nothing in my tank, having people that go, yeah, it's been a really big month, like have a few days off, have a few days of just like doing nothing, and then let's talk on Monday. Let's like put your emails down. You know, I think having same thing again. Determination can get you so far, and having drive can get you so far, but then having people to support you and carry you through the moments where you've got nothing in the tank, I think is like vital. You can't.
Yeah.
I can't do that, you know.
No, it's just being human, right?
Yeah.
We need each other. You going back to what you were saying before about being the sole income earner, having to work 12-hour days, and you're trying to get this career off, almost on the side, even though that's your absolute drive and passion. And COVID gets you in the guts and all that kind of stuff.
It's a real time.
It must take its toll, right?
Yeah.
What impact did that have on you, if any, like health-wise?
Yeah, I mean, my
Mental health
body was not coping in terms of, I started getting, adrenal and thyroid issues. And I think when that stuff started happening, I was like, I'm 26. I can't have this. Like, I can't, not saying like I can't have this, like, let's just ignore it. Like, I can't have this, like, carry on. I'm like, I have to adjust here. I've got to figure out, excuse me, I've got to figure out a way in which this is sustainable, because if the goal is to have a sustainable career, like that is my idea of success. So what do I need to do to make sure that my body is coping and to make sure that I am healthy and functioning well, and not even just like doing well as an artist, but actually as a person. So I'm like, that is way more important, and that flows into obviously my artistry. And I think sometimes people forget that. They just see, Georgia Lyon's the artist, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm actually a person, and I've got to figure out how do I do this in a way that I'm looking after myself. And obviously that time of like COVID, my husband doing full-time study, like that, we knew that was like, it was going to be a really intense time for a year, and we both just had to push through, and we just had to do that. But coming out of it, I was like, okay, learning about my diet, learning about like, what is my body needing? How do I reset my nervous system? How do I have really good sleep hygiene and habits, and all of the really practical things that when you start having those conversations, you realize that you're an adult.
Yeah.
The only nutrients my body is getting is from my food. So what am I feeding my body? What exercise am I doing? What is my routine? And how do I say no? How do I realize like saying no to this opportunity or this, event or show that isn't going to be detrimental to my overall career? Like, I can say no. I'm allowed to say no, and I should say no to the right things and say yes to the right things. So yes, it played a massive, it had a massive effect on my health. But I feel like without that, same thing again, without that moment of like realizing that this isn't working, there would have been no pivot. And it's just realizing that you're on this rat wheel of chasing after something and not knowing what you're chasing after. So I think that's been a really massive thing for me, is realizing I have to look after myself. I have to make sure that I'm having really healthy boundaries and having, I just finished this tour on Thursday evening, and I was like, right, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, no emails, limited time on social media. I need to be making sure that I'm actually recovering in those 4 days, eating really well, being really kind and gracious, and knowing that when I'm tired, that's often when I feel like, oh, I've got nothing in the tank. Why do I do this? Going, let's just park all of those thoughts until Monday or Tuesday, and then resetting. And then knowing I've got 2 weeks at home to do all of the things that I need to do, like get myself back in a routine. I'm still working, at home. I still am doing things every day in terms of with my job, but I've got the structure that I don't have when I'm on tour. So to answer your question, yes.
But where, like that change that you talked about there, your recognition that you need to look at your diet, look at how you're managing yourself. Was that kind of forced upon you through a change in your health, and someone else kind of gave you a bit of an indicator to look at these things, or maybe start doing something, or is that again something that you've self-reflected on and thought, actually, I need to do something, and then start investigating yourself what you need to do?
Probably a bit of both, of being like, well, I don't actually really know what I need to do here, and then kind of having different conversations with people, and someone going, oh, well, have you thought about talking to a nutritionalist, or have you thought about this person, and kind of finding, following the little breadcrumbs that when you have those conversations of, this is what I'm experiencing right now, my body's doing this, have you ever experienced this before? Or, when you have those conversations with people and you find out, oh, this is the journey that they've been on. Okay, I'm going to do some more research. I'm going to, work with a nutritionalist. I'm going to work with someone who can look at my lifestyle, look and know what my job and how much stress that can entail in different, seasons of it, and help me figure out a plan so that I'm looking after myself and something that is sustainable, and not just, okay, well, this works when you're at home, but doesn't work when you're on the road, or doesn't work when you're traveling. And every time I do a show, or I do, a tour, or I'm traveling, like, I do something a little bit better. And I'm like, okay, well, last time I didn't do these things well, so I need to make sure that I've got, a fridge in my accommodation, in my hotel, or so that I can go and buy food and I can prep for the week when I'm away. It's really hard to prep for the week when you're away if you do not have a fridge.
Yeah.
So, yeah, probably a little bit of like talking to the people, finding the right fit, because I definitely tried a few different, ways of looking at things. Nutritionalist was so helpful for me, because she wasn't just looking at like my food, but looking at everything that was surrounding that, like diet, sleep, what am I doing to de-stress, like all of that kind of stuff. So
well, what's interesting is that you are, even when you're out of control, you're in control of things, right? You seem to be managing yourself and quite, and I don't want this to come across as condescending, but because there's a slight difference in age between you and I, only slight. But at 26, was I switched on as that and thinking about those kind of things? Probably not. So it's good that you are, particularly when you're on the pathway that you're on.
And I feel it's funny, because when I did that trip in March to South by Southwest, that was a real pivotal thing for me, that trip, because I knew going into it, I was like, there's a lot being asked of me right now. I am playing 7 shows in 4 days, which is a lot and not normal. And there's a lot that rests on this in terms of like, I kind of mentally, I was like, well, I cannot guarantee anything from this. I can't guarantee any opportunities. So I'm not going to go into it knowing and hanging my hat on this has to be worth it in this specific way. Like, we've been given this opportunity. So, I was paying for my band to go over. Like, I had to front that cost. But I knew if we don't put ourselves in the game, you're never going to be considered. So for me, I was like, going into that, my biggest and my only thing that I was responsible for that week was looking after myself. All that looked like was being responsible for when I went to bed. I'm like, you guys can do whatever you like. I'm in bed by 9 o'clock, 9:30, if I didn't have a show at night. knowing like if I was in the room with a lot of people and there was loud music, like I'm not going to try and talk over people because I know what that does to my voice. I need to make sure that I'm eating really well. So I'm not going to be having barbecue every night of the week, even though we're in Texas and that's all I would really love. So I knew, I'm like, this is what I'm responsible for. And I came home and I was absolutely smoked, of course, because it's wild. It's a wild this week and so fun, but absolutely crazy. And I came home and I was like, I have to start treating this like I'm an athlete. Like, nobody treats vocalists like they're athletes. You're just a singer and you just sing a show and you can eat and drink whatever you like and it doesn't affect you. But I'm like, that's not true. And I have to, just something in my brain was like, I've got to start preparing my body and my fitness and my lifestyle in the direction of this so that I'm ready and my body is ready and my mind and all of the things are in place, all of the boundaries are in place so that if I do get asked to be on a tour or I do get a bigger opportunity, that I'm not scrambling to get fit in the space of a month, that I'm already working on that. And so coming home from that trip, I was like, okay, I have to take that responsibility because no one's going to tell me, George, you need to get fitter and you need to, work on this. Because if someone else tells you to do it, you're like, I'm not listening to you, But that was a really big internal thing for me of going, I have to take responsibility for this because if this is where I want to go, I have to follow through with this being like, this is the next step for me rather than like, anyway.
Well, you have to stay work fit, right? Fit for work.
Yeah.
I mean, it is work. It's like you said, athletes perform.
Yep.
You're performing. It's hard work. There's a lot more than just the like. I think you said 10%, which might be the on stage bit.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to it than that. Even though that would probably take a lot out of you, the performance itself, mentally and physically. But the build up to that and everything that goes into it, it is like preparing yourself and being fit for work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which no one talks about that because it's like you're in music and you're not, a runner. I'm definitely not a runner, but, it's a very different conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked about going to Texas.
Yes.
And 7 shows in, was it 4 days, you say? Yeah. A lot of effort, a lot of cost. I picked up on the fact that you say we a lot. I like that. Because people see you, it is Georgia Lines, but there is more to you, as you've alluded to before. And I like the fact that you say we, from a leadership point of view, I think that's important. So you all go over there and commit to this full-on week.
Yep.
But it was worth it, all right?
Yeah.
Because you got a good outcome.
Yes.
I've read about it. Can you tell us about that?
Okay. We're not very good at Kiwi, like being a Kiwi, we're not very good at saying this is a really cool opportunity that happened for me, Yeah. I'm trying to get better at it. So coming back from South by, I signed with basically one of the biggest booking agents in North America, Wasserman, which is absolutely wild. So Wasserman is the company and Larry Webman is my agent, and he looks after Coldplay. And I mean, their whole roster of artists, like I just looked at it and I was like, this is wild that somehow now my name is going to be on this list, and there's Coldplay and Frank Ocean and Sarah Bareilles and all of these artists. They are just, all of a sudden these artists that feel like they've been over here in America doing their thing, like you're like, well, I'm a part of the same company as them now. Like even though they still feel in this world over here, like you all of a sudden feel like, well, I'm playing the game with them.
Yeah.
Like I'm being considered, like Larry wasn't even at South by. Like he was following me on Instagram through my drummer Stan, who is, by the way, he's wild. Like he's so good. He gets up at 4 a.m. every single day and rehearses. And I look at that and I look at that work ethic and I'm like, man, I want to be like that. And having people on my team that do that and prep and work really hard before they're needed, like I'm like, that's so inspiring to me. But Larry was following Stan on Instagram, and Stan was obviously posting every day about all the prep he was doing for South by and, you know, tagging me in it. And so then Larry finds me on Instagram and I have no idea who this guy is. Like, I'm just like, oh, okay, cool. Didn't notice that there was, you know, his profile is private, and play these shows at South by, and then we get this email, you know, 2 days after we come home from Larry saying, hi, you know, my name's Larry. I look after Coldplay, and here's a bunch of artists that I personally look after. I wasn't at South by, but I sent 2 of my agents to see you, and I want to be on the team. And that was wild. And I didn't get that email. Mikey, my manager, did, and he rang me, and both of us just could not stop laughing because it was just like this like unbelievable moment of just being like, wow, like we've worked really hard to get here, and you know, even though we have not arrived, like it's just a really cool moment to stop and be like, someone's seen what we're doing, seen us, and being like, I love what you guys are doing, I want to be a part of it. And you know, just more feels funny, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so they're laughing. I mean, obviously laughing joyfully, but
Yes.
nervousness as well in there?
Oh yeah. And I'm like, what does this mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, what does this mean that like Larry on his list of people, you know, the 5 artists that he looks after, it's like Coldplay, Georgia Lines. Like, I'm like, what is that? What do you do with that? And so there was like a lot of nervousness of going like, what does this mean? What am I going to have to do now? And then also both of us going, well, nothing's happened today. All we have to do today is do the things on our list and not get overwhelmed at all of the what ifs or the possibilities or the like, you know, because my brain goes to like, the practicalities of like, you know, what does that mean? What am I going to have to do? Do I have to move to America tomorrow? Like all of that kind of stuff. So doesn't mean anything till it means something, you know, until there's like something presented on your plate with a physical opportunity.
But that must feel great though, right? To achieve just that recognition from someone who's working with those artists on the scale that they are, where they are, to be acknowledged and recognized that way.
Well, you're
it's
pushing
massive,
for
right?
so long. Like it's been 9 years, you know, of working and working and working and just keep going and facing so many like moments of disappointment and COVID and all of these, you know, along the journey, all these moments that happen, good and bad, and you're kind of just expecting like, I mean, it's terrible, but it's almost like I was expecting there to be like, okay, we didn't get any opportunities from that, we just move on to the next one and we just keep going, head down, just like, let's go for it. So I think there was a little bit of like, oh, wow, like, you know, not expecting, a little bit surprised, all of those kind of feelings of feeling really grateful in that moment to be seen, and also just like, oh, someone sees me, like, okay, like, let's just enjoy this moment before we head back down and carry on again, you know, because I think, definitely a feeling of like a nice feeling to feel like someone's seen.
It must be. Enjoy it, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's something in what you were just saying there about, you know, almost expecting not to get the opportunity and and then we'll push on and keep going, which is kind of the opposite, I think, of what many people, if not most people, would think. They would have high expectations of getting something, and then the disappointment of not getting it, and then would they keep pushing on? Would they have the enthusiasm to do it? But maybe your kind of approach and attitude towards it is, no, I'm just going to keep pushing no matter what. Doesn't matter what knockback, you know, comes my way. If I don't get the opportunity, that's not it. I'll just keep pushing. And then when you do get something, it comes as such a surprise because you were expecting to have to keep pushing.
I think that's why we're both laughing, because we're like, oh my gosh, we haven't just had the phone call from, you know, a random booking agent in America. Like there's 2 massive booking agents, and one of them, I mean, both of them contacted us, but one of them is here wanting us to, you know, to be a part of the team. Like, what? Just, you know, shock of that. And I think maybe there's an element of COVID, you know, the mentality that I guess lingered for me with COVID is like, if I, I'm not trying to say like, oh, I'm never going to expect anything good happens, because I don't think that's ever been my mentality at all. But I think knowing like, okay, what can I control? What are the things in my control? I'm going to focus on them and do and work really hard at those things. And everything else is out of my control, and I'm going to let whatever happens happen. And obviously there's disappointment that comes with that when you want something, or you're working for something and you don't get that, or you don't, you know, people don't like your song, or you don't have enough people come to your show, or all of those things. Like, that's out of my control. So I feel like in COVID there was this shift for me going, okay, I can only look at and I can only control what I can control. You know, my eating, my sleeping, my how hard I'm working, you know, what I do in the day, my routine. Like, I can control those things. Everything else I can't. And so I feel like that's always been, or not always been, but the last few years, that's been my focus. And maybe why I've felt less smoked by things not happening or things falling through. Because I'm just like, oh, well, that wasn't in my control. So I'm just going to carry on anyway. Yeah.
No, I think it's a great attitude. I think that's, I don't know, obviously, but I get a sense that that's what's making you successful. It's that attitude that probably separates you from a lot of people who try but don't make it. It's that focus on so far ahead. I'm going to have to keep trying, and you're kind of making it without expecting it. Well, you are expecting it in the long run, but maybe it's coming to you sooner because you're not wanting the next opportunity has got to make it for you.
Yes.
That willingness to put the hard yards in and keep working for however long it takes, I think means that you are getting recognised and achieving things sooner, maybe. Not necessarily sooner than you deserve, but sooner than you expect, if that makes sense. So anyway, that's just how I see things based on what I've heard from you and what I've seen and read about and listening to your music. So yes, it's a massive achievement already, and I wish you well going forward. So just on that note, as we're conscious of the time, and with life's work, we usually talk about legacy. Bit early for you, but you know what what would you want your legacy to be? If you allow yourself to dream a little bit, I know that maybe you're a bit. Again, I've got a sense from you that controlling your situation a little bit, not letting your thoughts or dreams get run away on you with you, which is a good balance, I think. But if you allowed yourself to dream a little bit, what might the future look like, and what would you want your legacy to be in the music industry?
I think one thing that I've really loved and didn't probably realize how much I would love it and how much life it would bring me when I started doing it was intros. And, you know, we've talked a little bit about that. You've watched, you know, the odd episode, and, you know, for me, every time we film an episode, I walk away and my tank feels so full. And I'm having, you know, these conversations with these women in the music industry, and they're sharing their stories and sharing what they're learning and, you know, things that they've had to walk through. And we've created a really beautiful space for those conversations to happen. So I've loved that. And then beyond that, what I've found that I think probably lingers a little bit in the legacy conversation is, you know, it took me a really long time, and I felt overwhelmed for a long time. Like, how do I pursue a career in this industry? And how do I don't know, when do I sign with a manager? How do I know at what point is it okay, you know, to bring more people on the team? Or how do I prep for an interview? Or all of these questions that, you know, as a young artist, it's really hard to figure out unless you are figuring them out and learning as you go. And so we created industry intros where I was interviewing, you know, women that have been around in the industry for a long time, and asking them these big questions and creating this resource for artists. And when we started releasing that, there was something for me that I was like, I feel like this is bigger than, it's not about me as an artist. Like I feel I'm hopefully helping another artist who might have a question or who might be, signing a deal or coming out of a deal or, wondering why no one's replying to their emails. All of these questions, I'm like, I've felt that's been a really special space to be a part of and to create, and hopefully that would be something that continues on. In terms of like, for me and what I hope, like how people experience me in 20 years' time, I hope that and I'm sure it will, but I hope that the legacy that's left behind is that I really cared about people, the people that I worked with, the people that when I played a show, the people when the security at the show, whatever it is and wherever people come into contact with me, like I hope people feel like I genuinely cared. Like I don't really, yes, the music's great. And yes, that's like, I really love what I do and I hope that people connect to my music. But, I hope that it's more than that for me. That it's not just like people remember me for music, but remember me, for how they felt and felt seen and felt, there's that saying that's like people don't remember you for something, but how you made them feel.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
I can't.
Yeah.
I really butchered that quote, but
but I understand what you're saying. So you, from a music perspective, you've got your music, but you want people to experience you and remember you, the artist, and who you are.
Yeah, and not in a way of being like, remember me, like make sure you remember me. Like I definitely don't feel that, but feel like, I want people to feel like, oh man, I really felt seen by her and she asked me, remembered my kids' names, or like, made me feel like I could do my job and be really good at my job and be my own boss and feel encouraged and, be another artist and feel like we're not competing against each other. And I'd love for younger artists to feel like I was someone that supported them and encouraged them and wasn't ever holding back information. I'm like, if I can somehow make a younger artist's journey easier and less of like overwhelming and feel like there is a resource and conversation and the ability to ask questions and to learn and to know who to ask or to, have intros and to have these things that they can look at. Like, I'm like, what a win that is.
Yeah.
Everything else, like, cool.
Yeah. That's great. I mean, I didn't expect that. I'll be honest with you. I expected an answer to be all about your music and where you're going to achieve, where you're going to be in 20 years' time musically. But I expect that you'll be in a great place anyway. But I think it's testament to who you are and where you've come from, your family and everything that's helped create who you are, that actually you've come out and basically what you said is that you want to be able to be of service to people, which I think is fantastic.
And the music's great, but it's like the same thing again. It's like you're more than your job.
Yeah.
Regardless of what industry you're in, like you are more than your job. And the moment that takes over your whole entire life, like you forget about this other side of you that you're like, I'm actually a normal person that wants to be around my friends and family and do normal things. Like I am more than my job, Yeah. And I think, it's easy to forget, especially when your job isn't 9 to 5.
Yeah, but that's great insight. I'm glad I've said what you've just said, because I think that's the angle that I wanted to approach is that it is fantastic, your music and your career and the creativity, but it is a job. And I didn't want to sort of play it down or anything like that, but I think that the issue is that people don't see it that way. And I think we're missing something by not seeing it that way. I think people need to realise just how much hard work it is, so that when they've got dreams of becoming an artist, that it's not easy to do. Have the reality check of it. Understand the amount of work that goes into it. It's not just a lucky break. Yes, there needs to be a break, and someone needs to give you a shot. If not, you make your shot like you have, right? But there's hard work that goes into it.
And just because there's hard work, it doesn't mean that it's not supposed to happen. Because I think, a lot of the time people are like, oh, well, too hard. I've tried at it for 2 years or something, and now, I'm moving on to something else. I'm like, just because it's hard doesn't mean you're supposed to do it. Like, very different conversation if you want to be an artist and you can't sing, But if you love it and you're passionate about it and you really want to make it happen and keep going and figure out how to do it. Figure out what is the very next thing that I need to do. Not, okay, well, I want to open in Madison Square Garden this week. I'm like, well, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to do that this week. But what do I need to do to make those things happen? I need to focus on the thing right in front of me and just do a really good job at that. And just one day at a time, just keep going.
Fantastic advice. Georgia, thank you so much for not just sharing your time, but sharing your wisdom and your experience and the knowledge that you've gained in your career so far. And I want to congratulate you on where you're at and what you've achieved recently. You and your team, of course.
Yes.
And also acknowledge that your music is fantastic. If no one's listened to it before, they should go follow Georgia Lyons on Spotify.
Yes.
I was introduced to you by my daughter.
Great.
Incessantly. I have to say,
that's awesome.
over and over and over again, stuck in traffic on the way in from a car.
Good.
But yes, great. I wasn't complaining. Great music.
I'll take that.
Yeah,
Thank
fantastic.
you.
I wish you all the very best
Thank you so
for your,
much.
what will be a brilliant career.
Thank you.
And I'm glad that we got to interview you now before you're far too busy for people like us.
No.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
As you will hopefully know by now, if you've seen other episodes, this segment of the podcast is all about wisdom worth sharing from our guests who are living a life that's a story worth retelling. At the end of every interview, I look back as part of the editing process and discover some of the gems that came out during the conversation and summarize them here. Now, I don't want to sound condescending, maybe it's just me showing my age here, but I was seriously and am seriously impressed by how switched on and conscious Georgia is in what seems to be every aspect of her life. And she's just 26. I know I wasn't thinking like that at that age, but I kind of wish that I had been. I was struck by her ability to learn from life and the people around her. She's very much in tune with how things work, her own mind, health, mental well-being, and what it takes to achieve things and keep moving forward. In fact, Georgia frequently used the term keep pushing on, almost like this was some kind of mantra or philosophy for her. No matter what happens, and interestingly, whether it was good or bad, just keep pushing on was her attitude and approach. Having just recently been signed by one of the most successful agents in the business, the same team that looks after the likes of Coldplay, Georgia still has her feet firmly on the ground. She could be forgiven for being excited and letting her imagination run wild with future possibilities. And I'm not suggesting that she isn't excited by the prospects of what's to come. But again, Georgia has the attitude of, well, nothing has changed yet, so we'll keep pushing on. It's almost like she hasn't had that success. She's not counting her chickens, as it were, before they've hatched. Instead, she's working hard and making things happen herself, not waiting for things to come her way. She said, it doesn't mean something until it means something. I think this is both unusual, but it's also a great attitude to have, and not typically what you would expect from someone who's been working since she was just a young teenager for an opportunity like this. This is possibly what makes the difference between those who are truly successful and those who think they've made it, but then things don't quite pan out as they had hoped. What I mean is Georgia is going to keep working hard, keep doing the things that make others want to work with her, and it's that work ethic, mindset, and attitude that I firmly believe will take her where she wants to go. A common theme across almost everything in the interview that I've had with all guests on this show is that success comes to those who are truly doing what they believe in, what they love doing, and as a consequence, they become good at. Having wanted to be in the music industry since she was in her early teens, Georgia feels like it's her calling to be where she is, doing what she does. It's so important for us to find our element, what we're good at, and what we love doing. If we can find that, and then have some of the determination and drive that Georgia has, we too can have success in every area that we want success in and that matters to us. Then opportunities come because we're ready for them and we can see them. If we spend our time in the woe is me mindset, we won't be doing the things that could change our circumstances, and we won't see the opportunities because we're not expecting to see them. We see what we expect to see. We don't necessarily observe what could be beneficial to us. And that's down to our level of consciousness. Something that stood out for me in respect of Georgia's character was her life's work, was about working to be helpful to others, to notice people, to remember their names and make them feel valued. She mentioned this again at the end of the interview when I was talking about her legacy. I have to admit that this came as a little bit of a surprise to me because, wrongly, I assumed it would all be about her music career. And of course it was, but what was most important to Georgia is how she goes about her business and how people will remember her, how she made them feel, not just how her music impacted them. An important point that Georgia made was that while she was in the act, or she was the act, she could not be there or where she is today without other people, whether that's the band, who are as committed and hardworking as she is, or whether it's her family who have been there behind her every step of the way. Not only did her parents encourage her, her dad would always tell her, "You can do this." But being business people, they also showed her how to work hard and how to work out how to achieve things. That support has no doubt started when she was 12 years old, starting her own t-shirt business. And it was quite successful, buying out her business partner and schoolmate for $200. She spoke highly of her manager, Mikey, and how the bond they have is more than just a typical working relationship. They are there for each other, are in this together, and talk to each other several times a day. There are so many people that Georgia relies on to do what she does, especially as she's been truly independent artist from the start and driving her own career. She made the point that it's critical to have the right people on the bus. And I was reminded of the Jim Collins book, Good to Great. Georgia said that if you've got the wrong person on the team, they can send you in the wrong direction over time. A little like firing an arrow or a bullet, just 1 degree out. Over distance, that can miss a target by a long way. Lastly, I want to talk about something that Georgia said that struck a chord with me. And that's why the title of this show is How Can I? This has always been a bit of a mantra for me since I was a teenager, wanting to buy my first car, which was probably a bit too flash and too expensive. And contrary to the advice of my parents, I tried to work out, how can I? I've applied that to so many things over the years, and then it became, how can we? Those 3 words are quite powerful. How suggests that we're willing to change and engage in problem solving. Can is a positive outlook, and we means that I know that I can't do this by myself, so who else can help? Well, let's work together. This attitude has helped Georgia from starting her own t-shirt business to a couple of years later being determined to start a music career and then succeeding in that. Importantly, this helped her get through what was a tumultuous time for everybody during the COVID pandemic and the lockdowns. Having created her EP, Human, and expecting to be able to launch that with an event, she had to rethink how she could do it. Georgia also had to continue teaching children the piano and singing remotely to bring in money while her husband and her were studying full-time. Throughout that period, the thing that got her through was a mindset of, how can I? Hopefully, you've been able to take away many insights from this interview that you can apply to some aspect of your own life, work, and legacy. Use them, share them. I always say that sharing is like teaching, and teaching helps us retain what we've learned and commit to change, which of course is absolutely necessary if we're going to enhance our life's work. I hope that you're happy, safe, and successful in all that you do. And remember, live a life that's a story worth retelling. I'm Steve Worsley, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Life's Work, the podcast all about wisdom worth sharing.